everybody. Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity. If you're as old as I am, and you probably are if you're watching this because you're a baby boomer or wannabe, but you would remember as kids watching some of the great shows on TV. There was just so many great TV shows back then, but one in particular that I remember watching a lot, and I think I've seen every episode at least twice, if not more, is the wonderful family TV show called Family Affair. And you remember it had Brian Keith and Sebastian Cabot, and they were going to be Brian Keith played an uncle, and Sebastian Cabot played the gentleman's gentleman. He was Brian Keith's housemaid, if you will, who kept up with everything to do with Brian Keith's life because Brian was a bachelor. And in the show, Brian's brother and his wife get killed in a car accident, and he is left to take care of their three children. And those three children are Buffy and Jody and Sissy being the oldest sister. And as you might imagine, what you see behind me on the screen, I had the wonderful opportunity of speaking with Kathy Garver, who played Sissy in that show. But she played a whole lot of other parts in a whole lot of other venues and media, especially when she was a little kid. She was in the movie none other than the Ten Commandments. I mean, she got to play with Charleston Heston. How cool is that? So anyway, I almost called her Sissy, but Kathy's career has touched on so many of the big parts of our pop culture, whether it be movies, TV, commercials, radio, the stage, you name it. She's been there and has exceeded in her accomplishments in those areas. So I had the opportunity to talk with her. We talked about her books that you see behind me on the screen. We talked about, of course, Family Affair, her faith, what has gotten her through kind of unscathed through Hollywood. Just a lot of great stuff. It was a fun interview. It's right on top of my list of one of the most funnest interviews I ever got to do. So without any further ado, here is my first interview with Kathy Sissy Garver. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. Hello there.
Hi there. How are you?
I am doing wonderful, especially now that we finally get to meet. So. Yes. I really appreciate you taking the time, Kathy, to meet with me. It's a thrill and an honor for me. I mean that. So.
Oh, well, thank you.
You represent, in my mind, I know a lot of people feel this way, a period of time of beauty and wholesomeness and intelligence and all of that. And your career represents that in my mind. And, you know, anytime we look back on those programs like you were in and the movies you were in and all of that, everybody I know looks at that and goes, wow, to be able to go back and have what all of that represents. It may not have all been real, but the heart was there, right? And I think it represents an innocence that, a lot of things took away from us over time, and you represent that. And I wanted to be able to put that front and center to everybody, as well as find out what you're doing with your career these days. I want to read you an email I got just about 2 hours ago before I posted on social media that I was going to be talking to you. And Kevin Gullickson from Radio Drive, who I interviewed a month or so ago, sent me an email about it. And he goes, I saw your post that Kathy Garver is your upcoming guest. That is so cool. My wife and I finished watching all 5 seasons on Amazon. I think you meant A Family Affair. We like to wind down each night to something nice, and that was the perfect show. They don't make them like that anymore. The family values were so wonderful to see, including the respect the kids had for their elders, and he put in parentheses, Uncle Bill and Mr. French. My daughter, age 30, started watching it too and loves it. Could you please tell her a special hello from my wife, Kimberly, and myself, and tell her how much we love that show?
Well, that is so nice. That's a wonderful email. Tell him thank you so much. And the heart is always real. Yep. So if times change, the heart remains and love remains.
I agree. And that's what I was talking to somebody recently, and we were talking about the political divide these days. And I told them, I said, I don't think we have a political problem. We have a heart problem.
Huh.
And
Yes, well said.
And I think that you alluded to that. I didn't get to read your book as thoroughly as I normally like to read books, so I had to go through it real quick so I could get some good nuggets there. But one thing I wanted to ask you, because I think it goes to why you're the solid person that you are, how you were able to survive Hollywood and still survive Hollywood, and that was you talked about you called it your thread theory. I absolutely love that. Tell fans who haven't read your book and haven't heard you speak what your thread theory is.
Well, when I started the book, the Surviving Sissy book, and it was primarily my autobiography, I just kind of started, with how I got Family Affair, and then went on to kind of a chronological approach. But as I was writing, it occurred to me that what I was putting together was my life, the fabric of my life. Mm-hmm. And in that fabric, there were many, many threads that when I looked at them and saw what they represented, so far had been making a whole blanket of which is my life. So it became an analogy. And there are Hollywood threads. There are lacy threads. There are kind of threads from a curtain, a stage curtain, and things like that that were representative of what was happening as I was going through my career, which started when I was 3 with mm-hmm. baby blankets and threads.
Well, and that, I mean, you bring up a good point, because I know that like on the book that's on here, Ex-Child Stars, I saw that Paul Peterson wrote the foreword on there, and I got to interview Paul, 10 or 11 years ago, and what he's doing now with, and was doing then with A Minor Consideration. I mean, there wasn't somebody like him around then, and yet you had the family background, your faith, just a solid foundation to be able to keep you straight. But sometimes that hasn't been enough for people. Why do you think it was different for you than it was some of the other, even some of your co-workers, your co-stars?
Well, as I analyzed in my Ex-Child Star book, and Paul was so instrumental in starting that organization, A Minor Consideration, because children were not treated right when they first entered the entertainment world. And we see, Coogan and his grandson now, Keith Coogan, and what happened to him, his parents stole all the money he made. And he was the number one paid person when he was in his career in the early days. And so Paul was so instrumental in getting contracts for children and kind of setting them on the right road. That was in the business capacity. So many times that we look and we forget about the emotion and the growing of a child star. Now, you see so many of the child stars that are in my book, and they're primarily from the 50s, 60s, 70s television shows and what happened to them. And many of them, once they were stopped being those cute little kids, couldn't make that transition over to even a teenager actor, and especially not an adult actor. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of reasons that they didn't. And I was lucky and blessed to have gone through that period and then through my old age. I'm paying grandmas now. So one of them is education. So many of them did not continue on to college. You see the ones that are successful, Brooke Shields and Jodie Foster and Ron Howard, and they all went to college. I went to UCLA and graduated with a degree in speech, and then got a master's degree in theater arts. And then there is the education of an actor. Now, so many of these actors that were child stars say, well, okay, now I'm a teenager. And there is a little bit of ego that comes in, and they didn't ever take acting lessons. And that was, again, a twofold reason, because producers and directors want kids to be as natural as they can. They don't want them to, put on anything. They just want them to be the kid, to hit their mark, say their lines, and go on to the next thing. And so they never developed how to be a character, how to analyze a scene, or all the things that are required if you're going to be a successful adult actor. And if you would approach them with it, well, what do you mean? I've been working for 10 years. I know how to act. I know how to be on the set. Yes, but that's not really true. They don't know how to build characters or to go from a scene to scene or that type of thing. Or, very importantly, how to take them care of themselves in a business. It is show business. And before Paul Peterson came along with A Minor Consideration, the parents would just spend the kids' money. And many times they were part of the big family. And so the money that the child earned went to support the entire family. And that was not good for the kid, who then at 18, hopefully would get his money. It was all gone. Yeah. And so Paul, at least in any contract, the child has to have so much money put away for the child. And then when they're 18, then it's theirs. So the parents can't take everything.
Right.
Of course, now I have a 31-year-old son, and he was in the business. And then he kind of dropped out at 12 or 13. He didn't like it, and making that transition wasn't good for him. But I had saved all of his money, and I had put it into a Coogan account, as it is called, from the bank. Mm-hmm. And I said, here, honey. And it was gone in a week. You have to watch these kids, and they need some direction business-wise. And that's another thing. When they're a child, they have the agent and the parent and the public relation person and this person, and they're all taking care of them. So when they're an adult, they don't know. They don't know how to get an agent or how to do publicity or that type of thing. Another very important thing are drugs. Yeah. The kids, they can't make the transition. They're depressed. No one is really dealing with that depression or know what to do with it. Their peers are taking drugs. So they said, oh, okay, I'm going to join that crowd. That's good. And plus I'll be accepted. That unfortunately is what happened to my poor little Anissa Jones, who played Buffy on Family Affair. She got with a bad crowd and started taking drugs. And unfortunately, she overdosed when she was 18. Yeah. Johnny Whitaker was on alcohol and drugs and everything else. And it just affects you so much. So again, it was really, thank you, God, for putting the sensitivity into me that I can't take drugs. I mean, I smoked one marijuana cigarette in my whole life, and I just passed out. And I said, well, this is not good. I don't want any of this stuff. I have Chardonnay, a glass of Chardonnay every night, which I find just quite nice. And I enjoy that. But again, it's one glass of wine or two glasses of wine. And so I don't have, thank you again, God, an addictive personality. I'm not addicted. And that's what I think happens to so many of the kids.
Yeah. And I think there's that. I mean, you see it, like I told you in my email to you, much of what the interviews I do are in the music side of things. So many of those people too. I mean, there's that, what to do with all the downtime for them. It's, 22 hours of nothing, and then 2 hours of showtime. And, what do they do with themselves? There's an insecurity. There's a boredom. There's a lack of being able to sleep, like what happened with Elvis and those kinds of things. And it's sad. And besides the fact today that drugs are just so pervasive anyhow, and becoming worse by the minute. But
and social media really took its toll on a lot of these kids, because the self-esteem part of that is, now you're open to millions of people. Oh, what a horrible color. Why did you wear a cranberry shirt? You really looked awful. Why did you choose that? And all of these bad things, and they say, well, I don't know who I am. And then they're going to be appearing, if they're on stage or a musician, in front of hundreds and thousands of people. I says, well, I'm really not good enough. They don't know that I'm really fooling them. I really don't know how to sing. I'm just pretending. Yeah. So their self-esteem has gone down. I find it very helpful that, See, my son still lives with his parents, my husband and myself. He never left home. What he did was invite a chicken to the nest. So she's been with us now for 10 years. And so I have my son and his girlfriend, his fiance of 10 years. But she introduced, I love having these kids around. And we have a great relationship. And she introduced me to affirmations, which are wonderful because there is also so much stress in the entertainment business. And I'm stressing here. I'm writing books and I'm doing television. I'm doing commercials and I'm taking care of the house and this. So you need something to calm yourself and, a meditation. And to ask whomever is your go-to person, is it God? Is it Jesus? Is it Buddha? Is it the universe? To say, I ask for abundance. I am fulfilled and grateful. Give yourself some boosts. I am talented. I am gifted. And boost yourself up a little bit, but you have to be who you are.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I agree with that. Going back to the show, reading through your book, and some things I didn't realize you were involved in, and others I did. But the two biggies, of course, is the 10 Commandments and Family Affair. Wow. And plus all the other people you worked with. It's just, do you kind of like just pinch yourself and say, gosh, I got to do all this stuff?
Well, what I'm proud of as I look back over my 70-decade career, how did that happen?
Which, by the way, I need to know what kind of donuts and cereal you're eating because you look magnificent. I'm 63 and been beat with more ugly sticks than I care to mention. So
I don't think phenomenal. So. You're looking pretty good to me, Randy.
Well, I bet you say that to all the boys. So. Thank you.
And
you look magnificent.
This is the style, with the mustache and
well, thank you.
It's looking good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But there's this I forgot, you got me so flustered. I forgot what I was asking.
What I was going to say is when I look back after my long career is that I'm very proud of everything that I have done. Mm-hmm. And so many of the things that I have done have become classic. And I've never done like an X-rated film or right. anything like that. I don't think people would cast me or believe me in them anyway, but it just hasn't been a lot of times presented of me to not, to even consider, which I wouldn't have considered.
Right.
But the 10 Commandments is classic and Family Affair is classic. I did animated series. I've done 5 of them. And the one that remains most classic is Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, where I played the voiceover and created the voice of Firestar. And she's still very much out there. And they made new little statues of her last year. And now there's a bigger statue of her coming out. So
very cool.
Yeah. So I've enjoyed the career.
Well, I can imagine. What do you think? From 10 Commandments to, let's just say, up to Family Affair, why do you think? I kind of said what I think it is because at the beginning of our talk, but what is it about those shows and those movies that has the legs that, because think about it, those are the shows everybody's going back and new generations are going back. As Kevin said about his 30-year-old daughter, people are going back and watching the good stuff from the 60s, the 70s. And I don't hear so much about that from, stuff that was made, I don't know, in the 90s, early 2000s. It just doesn't seem to have the draw, the appeal, the legs that shows that like you were involved in there. What do you think that is?
Well, I think that there are 2 things. As you had alluded to previously, heart. They all have heart. And I look at some of the shows I enjoy today, like NCIS or Hawaii 5.0 or some of those. And there is a love between the characters and a respect between the characters. Also, I think that those 60 shows were so classic because from a business point of view, there were only 3 channels at the time. there was just, CBS, NBC, ABC, and then a couple local channels. So everybody watched it. The entire nation was watching it, millions and millions of people. And so that built, I think, a lot of their cultural ease, what was going on. There is a question whether does culture reflect society or does society reflect culture? But that's a whole different kind of discussion. But because of that, I think that there's still a populace that goes back and remembers all those shows. And another reason, I think that the quality of our show was so good. It was transitioning from movies to television. And so we were shooting on film. And there were a lot of the people that were the creative force for Family Affair, like Ed Hartman, who was one of the creators and producers and writers. He had come off of Bob Hope, all the Bob Hope films and Abbott and Costello. So he had that kind of thoughts about how the show should be. And one of our directors that we had for 4 years, Charlie Barton, was right by his side in all those Abbott and Costello films. So the film itself was warmer and nicer. And it did give like a patina of maybe not reality, but, if you want reality, you do a documentary or you do an unscripted show. If you're going to do a scripted show, then there's a particular style to it. And it's all not going to be real because it's scripted. So, yes, it did. But I don't think that it was such an idealistic show. There really are people who love each other in the family and that respect them and try and solve problems that arise every time. Yes, we did. It was formulaic. So we'd start out with a problem, solve the problem, and then have the denouement. That's classic literary style. I asked Ed Hartman, and he wrote, and he was a president of the Writers Guild, Ed Hartman, who I just respect so much. He's a brilliant, brilliant man. But I said, well, what's writing about? And he said, it's like climbing a tree. So you see the big tree, you start climbing it up, you get to the top, you look around, see what's happening, then you slide down. And that was the way that every show was, put together and formulated.
Well, too, I think, when I think back in those times, there was all those shows that were very wholesome. Then we started transitioning. We started seeing shows like, Love American Style, which was kind of edgy and out there. We had Laugh In, which, we start in the Smothers Brothers, and, we started talking about real problems then and making fun of them and all that. But prior to that, there was just like, it dawned on me when I was looking at and researching on this, I had forgotten all about this, about your show with Family Affair, but how ironic that a show was predicated on death. A brother and his wife died, and the kids had to go to a bachelor's high-rise apartment in New York. It started with a tragedy.
Yes, you're right. It was more of a dramedy, actually, than a comedy with a whole bunch of joke, and then a joke. It was based on situation. It was a situational comedy, a sitcom, which I think back then actually reflected what a sitcom was. Right. But, there was always the underlying trist or sadness that these kids were orphans. Yeah. And, they were from like a Midwest town, and all of a sudden, whoa, what's all this? But that was very, downplayed, I think, a lot. It really started revolving more around the kids' problems.
Do you think, I know you did a revisiting of sorts on a series about the show, but aside from that, going back and looking, could a Family Affair really be made today that would maintain that wholesomeness, or do you think there would be, Jody Uncle Bill finds some weed in Jody's backpack or something. I mean, there seems to be that kind of stuff that wants to be injected into stories these days, as opposed to keeping it light and giving some people something good to hold on to. Would that be made today?
That's a very interesting question, because we do have a pilot called Aunt Sissy. Mm-hmm. And I think that sequels work better than remakes. They tried to remake Family Affair, and that was, awful. And they made like 13. They only showed 9, and it was just not right. And so many remakes are not successful.
That's right.
The ones that are successful, in my opinion, are like the Leave It to Beavers and the Brady Bunches, that take their original cast and then what happened to them and where are they now? Yeah. And so taking Aunt Sissy and putting her perhaps in Uncle Bill's role as a single person and a career person that has no idea what kids are. And then you bring it in and you focus it more on what is, an actress, writer, host with these kids, teenagers that she gets going to do with teenagers. She has no clue. And then that's the comedy comes from her and her Mr. French. And I do think it can be done. And I think it would rely on the Mr. Hartman's original formula for it to say, and then the content would be, what do these kids want? And, maybe no politics in it. And I don't know about the weed, that would have to, I don't know about the weed, but, certainly I think maybe for it to make it work would be more about depression. Why are they depressed? They're in a different place, or, simple things. And what do they want? What would their career be? Are they really going to be an entrepreneur? Are they going to, and put things in? Are you going to work remote? And how does that affect your friend now that you don't get to see your friend? That's your best friend. And how is that affecting your teenager? I'm just kind of making this up as we're going along. But yes, but the answer is yes. I actually think, yes, very much so. It could be done. And I am happy to say that I'm working on several projects. A couple unscripted, a couple films, this project, and they're all family oriented, and there is room for them on the 692 platforms that one can watch these days. And I know that there are fans for it. I know there are audiences for it. You see that even in some of these, the classic networks, Mid TV and Retro TV and Cozy TV and all of those. I am now working with a wonderful new network called Classic Reruns TV. Ooh. And what separates this particular network is all those other ones just license classic shows. Mm-hmm. This one does is have original programming. And that's why set TV Land aside and made it different from all these other ones. And I'm working on a couple of shows with them that we will have that. And it's Classic Reruns TV, and it's going to be really an exciting network.
Well, when you have those shows coming up, I mean, I'd be all for setting up one of these, maybe getting a couple of the other actors from the show and all that, and we can do a kind of a round robin on this and talk and try to help promote it and get people to start looking it up and all that. So keep that in mind when that starts coming out. Keep me posted on it, and we'll try to do one of these and get the word out.
That would be great.
I think it'd be a lot of fun.
I'd like also to invite people to my website, which is kathygarver.com. Mm-hmm. And because this is going to be a show right before Christmas, so I have to invite people to Sissy's Emporium. And Sissy has new Christmas candles. Oh, happy holiday Christmas candles. Right. I had them last year, but this is a whole new scent. These are cranberry orange, lovely candles. And it goes along with Sissy's room spray
Wow.
which is another lovely thing that we have. And then we have just my regular Sissy candles. And of course, all my books are there. And you have so kindly put them behind you. But I have them here. And if you go to my website, I will, autograph them. And they are really nice ones. This is a good one for Christmas, is holiday recipes for a family affair. And there are recipes and menus for every month. And of course, every month has a holiday. And we are, just finishing up with November. And then we go on to September. This was my first one, the Family Affair Cookbook, tells stories about each of the characters. And of course, my autobiography that you again alluded to, how I got my start, why I'm still here hawking things. And then this is my latest one, the scrapbook from Family Affair. It has great pictures in it. This is a really fun book, and it's a great Christmas present, I think, for people. And again, if you go to my website, I can sign them and send them. So,
well, I know I ordered the paperback from Amazon real quick so I could be able to get it quicker and read it, and go through it to be able to ask you some questions. But when this thing posts, I'm going to order the other books and get them signed, and because I may even order extra because I love giving things like that for gifts, and people love seeing the autograph, but but there was something you said in your book, I think it was in I wrote it down, chapter 16, titled Knots in Yarn, and you talk about your high school friends that you still stay in contact with, and which that's near and dear to my heart. I've worked on several committees for my high school reunions and just had one back in May, and to me, that's very important, to be able to still stay connected, not to live in the past, but to keep remembering what we learned in the past, and so those kind of relationships have always been very important. But you said something to me that really resonated with me, and I'd like to get some more insight from you on it. You mentioned that when you all get together, that there's still that even today there's the diverse political opinion, and that you guys can get very passionate, but you're still there for each other. That is lacking so much. I mean, friendships are being destroyed over politicians that don't even know we exist, and I don't care which side of the political aisle anybody are. Those bozos don't know who we are, and we're taxpayers, and that's it, giving units, as some churches call it. But you mentioned that you guys are able to still stay together. What's the secret to that, to have differences of political opinion and can still be true friends? Because I'm telling you, I'm watching it every day. Long friendships are being destroyed over this mess, and I think it's a tragedy.
Well, we still have that common bond. I think one of the most important parts of one's life and their development is high school. It really is. You change from being, a child, a teen, and become a teenager and a young adult. And there's so many things that are going on in your first loves and trying new things. And those kinds of memories stay with you. I really am sad to say that from that book, which was like 3 or 4 years ago, I see more fallout from even those friends that I had. And I see more division. And it's going to be interesting. We are having our reunion in April, and it's a very big one. And it will be interesting for me to see, because we loved each other so much. But there is a division, and two of my best friends are now so passionate about their one side that they can't see all the wonderful things that we shared and had fun with and got in trouble for and redeemed ourselves for, and what happened to us during our lives, whether we got married or had children or didn't, or what we are doing now and what we are looking forward to the future. Yeah. That, I think, is very important when you get a little bit older and say, well, what am I going to do? I know what has happened to me. I embrace every day, and I'm very mindful of my time. And I don't like to spend time with people that are going to be argumentative or, I don't like, whereas before I'd give them a little room. Yes, I don't particularly like that person, but it's a person and we'll have it. I don't like to do that anymore. I like to be with people I know, I like, I love, and that it is a tragedy that I think that there is such a split. It really is.
Well, I had an experience 10 or 11 years ago where a high school friend and I had a disagreement on social media, arguing over a particular politician. And she was bashing, quote unquote, my guy at the time, which today I wouldn't vote for him. But at the time she bashed him. And I've got a bit of an acerbic wit at times. And I said something that made her cry. And she wrote me the next day, and I couldn't even tell you what she wrote, except that it hit me such that I thought, you know what, I almost lost a friend over a politician, my guy, who doesn't know I exist. And it really changed how it didn't change my politics, it changed how I talked about it. And
yes, and I think that's important, and I think that people should, I'm a firm believer in free speech, and I listen to everybody's free speech. If I don't like it, I turn it off, and whatever. Now, I have a couple Facebook pages. I have my personal one, which is full of 5,000 or whatever, and 30,000 on the other. No politics.
Right. There's
absolutely no politics allowed on these. And if I see someone bashing someone, I just say, adios. This is not, I'm not going to spend one time reading your post. You go put it someplace else, because our posts are about people and your needs and what you were enjoying and this type of thing. But it's not a political post. Right. Go to, another one that you can, say everything you want and do whatever you think, but I won't read it.
I love that, because I'm the same way. Somebody told me I was Switzerland on Facebook because I'm just political. And I thought, you know what? I'll take that. That's a compliment. So
I like that. I would have been and I am primarily Swiss. So anyway,
that's right.
And Austrian. So I'm very, very practical. and I listen to everybody. Yeah, I'm neutral.
Yep. Same here. I tell people I'm sick of both parties. So that's. But you mentioned about your website. When I post this interview, it'll be on my page and then later on YouTube. But I'll have links to your site so people can order from you directly instead of through Amazon or any of the other places. That way the revenue goes totally towards you. And I want people to do that because they're, especially Surviving Sissy. I just think that is a must-read book for people, because it's, whether they want to learn about our culture back then, the pop culture then, or how to survive today. I think it's a very good and very relevant book for people to have, and I will plug it as well. But before we wrap up, though, I want to find out, what else are you going to be working on in the short term and the long term? What's on your radar?
Well, what I am doing, I'd like to do this for Christmas. I do a staged reading of A Christmas Memory by Truman Capote. Oh, and it's a 45-minute thing. And then I do a Q&A and meet and greet. So I'm doing that at various venues. I'll be at the Hollywood Heritage Museum and in Hollywood, across from the Hollywood Bowl, and Westlake at the Yacht Club. And then I'm doing another commercial in December. And I am hosting Chip's Reunion, where with Eric Estrada and Larry Wilcox and Robert Pine, and that's a live event that we are doing at the Richard Nixon Library. Very apolitical. It's just a beautiful venue. I mean, Sean Penn was just there, so but it's just a beautiful venue to do that. I'm doing 4 movies I have the one movie that I did this year, Yellowbird, was just at the American Film Art and was screened there. And so that also has a possibility of becoming a series, but we don't know about that yet. Another movie I did this year called Old Man Jackson will be premiering in January. I play Mrs. Jackson. And then I'm doing a movie in Chicago called Cancel This Movie. And then I am doing a movie called The Broken Road. And that's interesting about this fellow. I own a ranch, a horse ranch, and I have a daughter, and there's this fellow with PTSD. And does that relationship work? Do we save the ranch? So that's The Broken Road. And then I'm doing a Christmas Wish. I wanted to do a Christmas movie ever since I did like Hercules Saves Christmas back then. But I like this. This is a nice Christmas movie that we'll also be doing in Chicago in March. And then we have one that we'll see. That's another Western. I like Western movies. So got a lot on my plate. I have a book coming out called TV Dinners TV. That's to go along with the pilot for TV Dinners, which we have that all done. And that might be a series on this new network. So I'm trying to keep busy and make dinners every night and water my plants and buy presents for people for holidays and do all of that other stuff that people do.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad to see that you're still just out there kicking butt. I mean, that's
you betcha, Randy. Why not?
That's right. Let's make the most of our time here. But I mean it. Whenever you've got something coming up and it's getting, say a month or two out from when it's supposed to land, whatever TV program, a new book, whatever the case may be, let's do one of these. Let's talk and post it and show everybody what's going on and point them to where they can buy it or watch it or whatever it is you've got. Show up for your gigs, whatever,
Great.
So let's do that. My door is always open to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Well, thanks a million, and stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Same to you.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.